This is the story of my friend, Jinping Baozi, and the strange ordeal he went through. He had an unusual habit late at night. He would climb up to the rooftop and use binoculars to watch the city he lived in. He liked observing the streets at midnight, so different from their usual daytime bustle. The silence, the distant water tower, the taxi carrying drunken passengers up the hill, the solitary vending machine standing still. He found joy in quietly watching the city's hidden movements in the dark. On Baozi's house's west side, there was a long, straight slope leading down toward his neighborhood. From the rooftop, staring westward, he could see the entire length of that slope. One night, he was looking at the lonely vending machine at the bottom of the slope through his binoculars. He noticed a huge moth fluttering nearby. But then something else caught his eye, something moving down the slope at an alarming speed. Curious, he focused the binoculars on the shadow. What he saw sent a chill through him. A naked, emaciated child, bony as thin, smiling broadly. The child stood there waving at him, then suddenly darted rapidly toward the vending machine. The thing plainly noticed him. It stared directly back and waved in return. Baozi's heart skipped a beat. He looked again, hypnotized and horrified. The child kept running fast down the slope, eyes locked on him, waving merrily. It was terrifying. He felt something was very wrong. Panicked, he hurriedly ran downstairs and locked himself inside the house. He shut the door tightly, thoughts racing, wondering what on earth that thing could be. Just as fear overwhelmed him, he heard rapid footsteps, pat rushing up the stairs toward the rooftop. Clearly, someone was searching for Baozi. Silently, he muttered to himself, "Oh no, what do I do? What do I do? What is that thing?" Too scared to make a sound, he stood trembling in the middle of the living room, gripping an iron as a makeshift defense. Moments later, footsteps retreated downstairs. His whole body shook, his heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst out of his chest. Then came pounding on the door. The doorknob twisted rapidly and strange, guttural moans outside. He held his breath, heart racing uncontrollably, body trembling with terror. After what felt like an eternity, the knocking and doorbell stopped. Silence swallowed the night again. Yet Baozi's tension wouldn't ease. He kept staring at the door, rigid and frozen, until the sun finally rose. After that terrifying night, Baozi refused to use his binoculars at midnight again. Even now, whenever he recalls it, he wonders, what was that thing? Was it some kind of supernatural experience? He still doesn't know, but it was definitely something unexplainable. This happened about 15 years ago, back when I was living in Kato City, Hyogo Prefecture. I have a hobby of picking wild vegetables. After gathering them, I usually make steamed buns, a habit my friends teased by calling it the Baozi habit. Every spring, I'd head up the mountains. Picking wild veggies means leaving the hiking trail and walking through unmarked grasslands. That day, I set out on one of those Baozi habit trips to a spot I'd visited a few times before. The woods were full of beautiful plants and some mushrooms. I got completely absorbed in it all, forgetting everything else. After a while, feeling a bit tired, I took a sip of water and looked at my haul. I was quietly pleased, so glad I came. The harvest was great. After a short rest, I checked my watch. It was all ready for pee. Time to head back, I thought, satisfied. But on my way back, I lost my sense of direction. I felt my way around, aiming roughly for a ridge, but no matter where I went, the scenery was unfamiliar. I muttered to myself, this is bad. Then, about 30 meters ahead, high up among the trees, I caught a glimpse of a figure moving from left to right. The dense forest made it hard to see clearly, but it seemed like a group of 3. I sensed they were chatting and laughing as they walked, though I couldn't hear the words. The laughter was unmistakable. Great, I thought, maybe that's the hiking trail. I started climbing toward them, but when I reached the spot where I'd seen them, I nearly fell off because it was a steep cliff. Impossible to walk on. For a split second, my spine went cold. I thought to myself, this is bad, because I'd climbed up a slope. I took several deep breaths to steady my breathing and calm down. Through the scrub trees, I looked up at the sky and confirmed position, so at least I knew which direction I was facing. After that, I walked along the northern slope of that mountain for a while before finally reaching the hiking trail. Once I got to the trail, I felt a wave of relief, but the sky was already darkening. I glanced back at the path I'd just taken, and from the distant thicket came the loud, cackling laughter of 3 men. Terrified, I hurried away. Later, I made it down the mountain safely before nightfall. I'm still not entirely sure what that was, but those laughs have never left me. They linger in my ears even now. What exactly did I encounter that day? My father used to be a sailor. He worked on many cargo ships over the years. Because it was seafaring work, I rarely saw him when I was a child. But because of his experiences, every time he came home he'd tell us stories about what he'd seen and heard. Back then, I really loved the stories he told. They were genuinely fascinating. When I was little, my father once told me a story. He said that on the ship he was working on at the time, the crew didn't have private rooms, so he had a roommate. Not long after my father's ship set sail, someone on board committed suicide. The person who killed himself was the roommate who slept in the bunk above him, in some corner of the ship. The man had taken a knife and slashed himself, then died. Blood was everywhere. After his roommate was discovered, my father and a few other crew members were ordered to handle the scene together. He said that when they lifted the body, it felt incredibly light. The man had bled out completely, that's why he was so light. Thinking back on that roommate, my father remembered him as a very meticulous and serious person. The kind of guy who'd show up for his shift even with a cold. So not long after his roommate died, strange things started happening in the room. My father would often hear someone climbing down from the upper bunk in the middle of the night, followed by footsteps, then the door opening as the person walked out as if still on duty, or sometimes, in the middle of the night, he'd feel someone climbing up into the top bunk to sleep. My father told me with a look of fear on his face that he was actually scared back then. He didn't dare open his eyes to look. I asked him, puzzled, "Why did your roommate kill himself?" My father sighed helplessly. I'd heard him mention once that his wife was apparently having an affair. He was suffering because of it. That seems to have been what broke him. Being a sailor pays well, but it's hard work. You're away from your family for long stretches. Both the sailors and their families have to endure loneliness. Later, I asked curiously, "By the way, when there's a body on the ship, how do you handle it?" My father thought for a moment. Oh. Back then we held a small ceremony for him on board, and then the captain, following orders, buried him at sea. The company's policy is usually to try to freeze the body until you reach port, then process it and send the employee home to Japan. But we'd only just set sail. There was no way to keep him frozen until the nearest port, let alone return to Japan. So we had no choice. We gave him a burial at sea in international waters. Years later, when I thought back on this, I looked it up online. According to Article 15 of Japan's Mariners Act, when someone dies during a voyage, the captain may order a burial at sea. The conditions of the ship must be in international waters. At least 20-4 hours must have passed since death. A photograph must be taken. Hair and personal effects must be preserved, and measures must be taken to prevent the body from floating back up. It seems that in unavoidable circumstances, burying a colleague at sea really does happen, and I imagine making that decision must be incredibly heavy. So I went back and asked my father more about that roommate. Did you ever encounter his ghost in the room again after that? My father thought for a moment, then said, matter minus of minus factly. I lived with that ghost roommate for a while longer. Can't quite remember how long. Anyway, if I was sleeping in the room at night, I'd hear him crying. Sometimes when I opened my eyes, he'd be right in front of me soaking wet. His face rotted away, and he'd warn me sternly, whatever you do, don't die at sea. If you do, you'll never make it home. My father looked at me, unsmiled. Good thing I didn't die at sea. Huh? But because of that experience, I'd always warn the new hires who came on board. I'd tell them, young people, don't go and die on the ship by accident. Because if you die, your soul and your body might never make it home. A few years ago, when I was still a college student, I got a night shift job at a small clinic through an introduction from a senior. My duties were simple: make one patrol inside the clinic, answer any phone calls, then just wait until morning. No one bothered me. It was the dream part minus time gig. The clinic had 3 floors in total. On the first floor were the reception, waiting room, and treatment rooms. The second floor held the offices, meeting room, and kitchen. The third floor was the duty room. The duty room was a Japanese mime-style tatami room with only one staircase. Even though it was a small clinic, it had everything you'd expect. The whole place was secured by a security company system. The usual night shift routine went like this: arrive at 9 p.m. Unlock the security mode from outside the back door, since the main entrance was completely locked by 7:30 p.m. Then do a quick patrol inside the clinic. After that, head up to the duty room on the 3rd floor, where the security company's control panel was located. Once inside, you deactivate the security mode. The 1st and 2nd floors were almost entirely covered with security sensors, but there were none inside the duty room itself. That meant you could move freely in there. The panel had indicator lights: green if there was no problem, red if any sensor was triggered. If a sensor went off, it'd alert the security company and the clinic director. Opening any door or window would immediately sound an alarm. Once you switched to security mode in the duty room, the job was basically just waiting unless a phone call came. Honestly, it only ever had one night minus time call, so after patrol, I usually just egged out, watching TV, eating convenience store bentos, doing whatever I pleased. One particular night, I did my usual patrol, then came back to the duty room. After setting the security system to alarm mode, I turned on the TV, ate my bento, and was dozing off, head resting on the desk. At that moment, a program ended and commercials started. I glanced over at the security panel and couldn't believe my eyes. The light was red. Until then, I'd never seen the red light come on. Was someone else still in the clinic? But right away, the red light flipped back to green. I thought it over carefully. There's no way someone else was inside. If the director or another doctor had come back unexpectedly, they would have disarmed the system from outside the back door first. Any intruder opening a door or window would instantly trigger an alarm. So maybe it was a malfunction. If it was real, the security company should have called the director, who should have then called me, but it had no calls. That meant the panel was broken somehow. I kept staring at the panel, feeling relieved by the green light. Then suddenly the red light flashed on again. Only this time, it didn't go away. Something was definitely inside the clinic. Or something. A sudden wave of irrational fear swallowed me. I was convinced something unknown was creeping toward the duty room. Hurried, I called the director. The phone rang a few times before she answered. "What's wrong?" she asked. "The security panel is showing red," I said. She sounded surprised. "I haven't received any alerts from the security company." "Are you sure?" I explained it did turn red once before, then green. But this time it's been red the whole time. "Got it," "I'll check with the security company right away. Wait there, I'll get back to you." Hearing her calmness steadied me a bit, but the red light didn't go off. The fear clung to me, gnawing away. About 2 minutes later, the director called back. "I've confirmed with the security company," she said. "No reports of any trouble on their end." I was shocked. How could that be? The red light's glowing right here in the duty room. What was I supposed to do? "I'm coming over now," she said. "Wait for me there." After hanging up, I felt grateful for the director, someone reliable in a crazy situation. The red light kept shining, but the clinic was silent. No sounds, no movement. Slowly, my tension eased. Then, I heard a car outside, followed by footsteps downstairs. From the third minus floor window, I couldn't see the main or back entrance, but I could watch the path beside the main door leading to the back. There she was, the director, flashlight in hand. She was walking toward the back door. I kept my eyes on her until she disappeared from sight. A few seconds later, the security system was disarmed. The director had turned off the alarm from outside the back door. I urgently wanted to meet up with her, so I slid open the door and stepped into the hallway. The moment I stepped into the hallway, a sudden unease washed over me. A sharp, metallic stench hit my nose, thick and overwhelming, filling the whole space with a foulness that words can't capture. Fear welled up inside me. Still, I had just seen the director walking this way. She had to be on the first floor, so I flicked on the hallway light and headed for the stairs. The clinic staircase, viewed from the third floor, gave a clear sight line all the way down to the very bottom of the first floor. I peered down. The first floor lights were off, and that stench, it was heavier now. Why was the director turning on any lights? Had she really come in? As the smell grew more unbearable, a strange sound drifted up from deep in the first minus floor corridor. It was somewhere between singing and chanting, like a prayer or an eerie hymn. That sound rooted me in place. Fear spiraling. Doubt crept in. Was it really the director down there? My mind blanked. Cold sweat slicked my skin, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the first floor. The foul stench thickened still, and that humming voice grew louder. Something or someone was coming up the stairs. My brain screamed, "Run!" but my body refused. Frozen. Then I saw it. It stood nearly 2 meters tall, sky in a sickly flesh tone, almost white. No clothes, no hair, just smooth, glistening flesh like polished marble. Its long, spiddery limbs moved with unnatural fluidity, joints bending and clicking with an eerie rhythm. It hummed that chanting song as it reached the first high-taste floor stairwell and then started climbing. What the hell was that thing? I had to run. I had to get away. But fear had me rooted. No movement. When it reached the landing between the first and second floors, my phone in the duty room suddenly rang. The creature stopped, head whipped up toward the third floor. Our eyes met. Its odd eyes spun wildly in its head. It grinned, revealing a mouth rooked and wide beyond reason. It laughed a deep, guttural, unsettling chuckle. Then, with terrifying speed, it charged up the stairs. I jolted upright, my body finally moving of its own accord. But there was nowhere to run. I sprinted into the duty room, slammed the sliding door, and pressed my weight against it. After a beat, that sinister chanting drifted back from the stairs, mixed with that thick, choking stench. It was here. I pressed my Termina-streaked face against the door. My mind conjured the image, its smooth, glistening skull slamming hard against the door. Thump, thump, thump. It pounded, desperate to get in. I was losing my mind. I screamed. "Please stop, don't break down the door." I was hysterical, crying out in pure panic. Then, abruptly, the pounding stopped. The chanting vanished. My father sat down on the floor, eyes glued to the door. I backed slowly toward the wall behind the duty room, leaning against it for support. Though the pounding and chanting ended, I was certain the thing stood right beyond the door. The stench was 100 times worse now. For some reason, I knew that it planned to break through on the next assault. I stared at the door, inching toward the window. Suddenly, it slammed the door with all its might. At almost the same instant, the door gave way. I leapt out the window on the 3rd floor. Falling downward, I looked back up. Its grotesque mouth spread wide right in my face. Then darkness swallowed me before I hit the ground. When I came to, I was in the hospital. Days had passed. I was broken arms, legs fractured, my skull cracked. It hovered close to death. My family was relieved